Hello, welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr Podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you happen to be listening to this on iTunes, go ahead and leave a 5-star review, please, and thank you. Quick shout out to some dates coming up this Thursday. I think that's today. That is today. Later today, you can see me at Bridgeport. In Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm doing the Stress Factory over there in Bridgeport. So that's, if you're listening to this and you live in Connecticut and you got nothing to do tonight, I hope to see you there. And then I'm heading to the Jersey Shore, Point Pleasant Beach area this Saturday, the 17th, with comedians of the Compound. And then the 20th, I'll be headlining Jinx on the Boardwalk. Then heading to New Orleans to perform at the Comedy Theater over there. August 13th and 14th, and then back to Vegas September 10th and 11th with comedians of the Compound, and then I'll be back in Texas September 17th and 18th at Hyenas in Dallas. I really like that room. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Cushy Dreams. They are my go-to for all things CBD related, and I feel like in this ever increasing anxious world, it's we need it now more than ever. Just ways for us to kind of relax, and Cushy Dreams really helps me with that, to be honest. They offer a full lineup of premium smokable CBD. They specialize in extraordinary CBD rich hemp flower, aka bud, in cans and pre-rolled joints. Tastes great. Smells great. It's just like high quality weed pretty much, but you're not going to get high. There's under 0.3% THC in all of these products, so you can enjoy all the health benefits of CBD without going out to lunch. It's cannabis that ships directly to you, and it's legal in all 50 states. It helps you sleep. It's just a good little something if you're feeling a little anxious before bed. Join the men and women who are sick of vapes and gummies and want to smoke their CBD. Cushy Dreams has CBD flower in pre-roll joints that come in specific indica sativa blends like Energy, Hustle, Relax, Create, Dream, Energy. I said that one already. I like the Hustle blend. It makes me want to go it's like up and at 'em. But if you want to relax before bed, do like Dream or Peace or one of those. So go to cushydreams.com. That's KUSHY dreams.com and get some high quality CBD bud. At the checkout, use promo code CMP. You're going to get 20% off every order and smoke your CBD. All right. Enough of that. I'm so excited to have this girl here. This gal. She's a woman. We're grown women here. I've known her for years. I always love talking to comedians who I feel like we kind of started out at the same time-ish. It's always interesting. I always love hearing about each comedian's path to success, because there are many different paths to success, and it's exciting because no one gives you a roadmap for this career. So she's a comedian. Follow her on Instagram at Jocelyn Comedy. Jocelyn Chia. So excited to have you here. Hello.
Hi, Chrissy.
Jocelyn.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to be here.
Oh my goodness, Jocelyn. Okay, obviously the big exciting news for you is you were just passed at arguably the #1 comedy club in New York / the country, the Comedy Cellar. I'm sure
The world.
the world. Yes, people have said the world. Absolutely. No big deal. Just the best club in the world. Right. Do you want to describe a little bit what that was like? Was it something that you had on your goal list and it kind of came to a little bit earlier? Was this a long time goal of yours? Explain, how this came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I can even show you a picture, because 3 years ago when I was doing my vision board, I went to Comedy Cellar and I took a photo of the lineup. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe you can see.
Wait, tilt your phone down a little bit. Okay. Yes,
oh, yeah.
I see that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because they have the board outside. Yeah, they have the little whiteboard where they write.
Outside. Right, and then I can make it less bright.
I already love that there's a vision board. I already love there's a vision board involved in this.
vision board story. I canceled one of the names out and I put my name on
Your name.
it. And I
That's
put it on my
so
vision board as
cool.
one of my things. Thank you. So this has been
Oh
in
my
like the
God.
manifestation process for a few years. And obviously as a comedian, it's been in my dream for many years, right? Since I first started comedy. So yeah, this I put it on my vision board 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I was talking about a comedian that was rising very fast. And everyone was saying what a great networker this comedian was. I was like, oh, networking, that's something I don't bother doing. I always focus on just getting good enough. All right, I should try networking. So I started doing a little bit more networking. Went for a comedy party once, and another time I went to another comics show just to support her. And it was really great. The first time I went for a party, I got booked for a show at the Knitting Factory, which, as you know, is one of the hottest rooms to play in New York City. And when I went to support this other comedian, she was like, "Oh, yo, Jocelyn Chia, come do my show the next time." I was like, "Oh my God, you know who I am? Of
Wow.
course, I
That
love the
usually
comic."
doesn't happen. Like that doesn't happen just like that. Like that's great though. Like not
It's
every
very a
comics.
good sign that this is something that I needed to do. Comics, what?
It's a great time because like a lot of times comics will get frustrated with the networking aspect of it because I've heard a lot of complaints like, oh, I've spent X amount of times going to this show or X amount of years hanging out at this club and they don't get asked to perform. But that's good. That just shows that you had the talent to back it up.
I think that's the important point because the third thing that I did, which will lead to the Cellar story, was I was at the stand, I had a spot, and normally before my spot, I'm just in my notebook, like, okay, what am I going to do? And then mentally rehearsing, just very focused. I've always just been very focused on the craft of comedy. But now I was like, I'm going to fucking network. So I went to the comics table. I was like, fuck my jokes. I'm going to network here. So I went to the comics table and I hung out and comics like, oh, Jocelyn, do you know so-and-so? I was like, yeah. Actually, I did. There was a comic I didn't know. He's like, oh, yeah, I know of you. So I was like, oh, wow, you know me. And then this comedian, do you know, I'm sure you know Sherrod Small.
Sherrod. Oh, yeah, from Race Wars. Yeah.
Race Wars, yes, totally. So Sherrod was at the table and he goes, hey, Jocelyn, have you done my podcast before? And I go, Sherrod Small, I didn't even know you knew who I was. So no, I've not done your podcast before. He goes, all right, well, that is a shame. And he invites me to do his podcast. And from that podcast, I was how to know him better. And also, just to tie back to the hanging out point, there was some comics at the stand, like, oh, what are you doing here? La, la. So I'm just, wanting to hang out. And like, oh, you're actually doing it the right way. Because once you've gotten to a certain level where people actually know you, then hanging out matters. So, because they were like pointing to some open micers who were at the stand hanging out, and they were like, at the open mic level, there is no point hanging out at the stand because people don't, only other open micers know who you are. And so you're hanging out with other open micers at the stand, right? Or wherever else you're hanging out at. So I would definitely say the most important thing is to get good enough, and then hang matters a whole lot more. It matters at whatever level you're at, right? At the open level, if you hang out, you can get booked on other open micers bar shows. So I think there is some merit to that. You're not gonna hang out at the Comedy Cellar and get into the Comedy Cellar just from hang out at the open mic level. So most important is to get good enough that people know that you're a good comic. So Sherrod's story is I did his podcast, then pandemic hits and everything. So 2 years by, and I come back to New York, April of this year. I was like, I'm getting the Cellar. I was like, this is my goal. And so what I would do was every time I had to go to do what at the Pear, the Lantern, Greenwich Village, I always made sure to take the route that passes by Cellar. When I was done with the spot, I'll walk right by the Cellar again, just to be seen, in case I knew anyone, could say hi. So in one of my walk-bys, Gerard Small, Greer Barnes, Seton Smith, a British comics I didn't know were hanging out. And there happened to be an empty chair there. I just shamelessly plopped myself down in that empty chair, hung out with them.
That's great.
And I just did this. I constantly did this. So it was that was the first time I did that. And then every time I continuously hung out, because I knew Sherrod from the podcast, I just sat down whenever he was there with whoever was hanging out there, right? And then finally, and Sherrod got to hear comics that happened to be hanging out, like Greer Barnes mentioned, oh, Jocelyn Chia is very funny. Jackie Fabio was like, oh, she's very funny. So he heard like a few other Cellar comics mentioned that was funny. And then finally, in like maybe a couple of months of doing this like drive-by hang, I was hanging out again, and all of a sudden I hear him say out loud to the manager, oh, Jocelyn's doing it next Monday. I was like, I'm doing what next Monday? He goes, your audition. I was like, I have an audition?
Yeah, you had no idea?
I was like, no, you didn't tell me. Yeah, it was pretty sudden. I didn't even have time to over practice, which is you can over practice these things, right? So it was like found on Thursday, I was having an audition the following Monday. I really have to give a shout out to, so in terms of the relationship development, producers and Rich Brooks at another club, surprisingly, was actually very supportive of like, oh yeah, you have an audition to Cellar. Hey, if you need spots, like feel free to hit me up. So that was like super sweet, right?
Yeah, that means a lot, especially when you had like 4 days to prepare, and you're like, I need to get some stage time.
Yeah. And then I was hit with a surprise. I was like, okay, it's a 5-minute set. Second one, I was like, no way, I have 2. But it actually turned out to be a great thing because I got all my nerves out in this first audition. First auditions for the manager, the general manager. And it was at Fat Black Pussycat on a new joke night. The audience wasn't super hot, probably because, it was just a new joke night, right? So they were like there, and it wasn't a regular Cellar show. So it wasn't super hot. So it's definitely more of a nervous set than if I was at the Cellar. If you're a crowd, you just lose your nerves because they're so hot. They were like a medium-ish crowd. I was like, oh, I'm not really like killing, but doing well enough that the manager after was like, pass me your tape, I'll send it to the booker. I was like, okay, great. She liked it enough that I can get it to the booker. So now I'm like, okay, I need a fresh tape. Like my tape was pre-pandemic, it was a while ago. So again, who has a spot for me? Again, Rich Brooks freaking hooks me up with a spot and tapes it for me, sends it to me. So now I have this fresh tape. They send it to the booker, and I get invited to audition. And I'm so glad I did the pre-audition because I wasn't really nervous because I got all the nerves out. I had no more nervousness left, So I went to the audition. I was still, of course, still nervous to the extent that I couldn't think of anything all day. Oh my God, I can't even eat. But it wasn't the crazy nerves that I had when I thought I was just like this one shot, right? And also because I got into the first time, I wasn't as nervous the second time. And a comic at the Cellar, Wilson, Vince told me, now we're doing it this way because we wanted comics to get their nerves out in the first audition so they're not as nervous in the second one. He's like, he noticed that when people just went straight to the booker for SD, people were very nervous. And there are some comics that still audition straight for SD. And there was another comedian that the booker was just commenting. She passed, so she did well, but the booker did comment that the other comic was nervous, but Jocelyn Chia, been there, done that. And the other comic did not pre-audition. She went straight to SD. So this system really works. You're like, oh my God, I have to audition twice. But it works to like get your nerves out the first time around. So the second time, you're like, all right, I already fucking auditioned once. I can do this. So I go to the Cellar, and like after being nervous all day, I finally get to the Cellar, and they're like, oh, you'll probably be on the next show. I was like, oh my God, I have to wait another hour. Fine, I'll wait another hour. And as I'm like waiting, all of a sudden, the next comic was delayed. So they're like, hey, Jocelyn, you're up next. So-and-so's running late. I was like, oh, I'm up next, which was actually really great because I didn't be nervous for another freaking hour. So I go down to the stage. They're like, all right, here's where you enter the stage. Here, let me hold your bag. Like this big grown black guys are all right holding my little Asian bag. It's very funny. And they're like, all right, go. I was like, okay. Like on stage, do my first joke. Once I hear that first laugh, I forgot I was auditioning. I just like went with it. The audience was hot. They were like laughing everything out, laughing at every word they should be laughing and more. So I had a couple of surprise laughs I wasn't expecting, which is always a great thing. It's always a sign that they're really loving you. And my set, didn't even have time to finish my set because they were laughing so much that they took up another 2 minutes of my 5 minutes. So didn't finish my set, but like I just had to end it like in your mid set. And then the host comes up and he hugs me for like a good 6 seconds, which feels like a very long time when you're on stage, right? A good 6 seconds, just like hugs me, like just like hugging me. Audience is going crazy. And then he's like, this was her first time at the Cellar. And they go even crazier. That was my first time. I was even a regular comedian. Yeah, and I walk off the stage, people are clapping, cheering, high-fiving. The booker's there, and she takes me by the hand, come. I'm very impressed. And then we go to the table, and she's like, let's make this happen. I was like, that means I'm in. And she's like, yes, you're in.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a really, it didn't hit me, Chrissy, because sometimes you're in a daze. Like when these things happen, it's just so quick, so much going on that it didn't register until afterwards when Gary Gallman, who was one of my comedy idols, was about to go on stage. I was like, oh, I have to catch Gary. He's my idol. So I go, and now I'm watching Gary Gallman, one of my idols, on stage at the Cellar, and now suddenly tears start coming to my eyes. Like, I'm a fucking comic. It hit me. I'm a fucking Cellar comic. I mean, that phrase, Cellar comic, is a phrase that, as you know, people will be like, oh, so it's a Cellar comic. It's a Cellar comic. Like, you just want to be a Cellar comic. And I'm like, I'm a fucking Cellar comic. And my first spot is today on my birthday. Couldn't ask for a better birthday.
So right. I should have started with happy birthday. How dare I?
Oh, no.
Wow.
Cellar is more important. I've had, I was about to like reveal my age. I have had like so many birthdays. This is my first Cellar spot.
Oh, wow. That's really, were you in your mind like very aware of the time, like timing wise? Were you thinking, wow, I can't go 5 seconds over this 4 minutes? Like, were you really, being hard on yourself in terms of time? Like when you had to retool to cut that extra minute out, were you in your head thinking like, okay, no matter what, I just can't go over a certain time?
Yeah, for the first audition. So for the first audition, all right, I was like, okay, 4 minutes. What should I do? My closer is pretty short. It's only maybe 30 seconds. So I was like, if I cut, but then the joke before the closer is like a minute and a half. So I was like, oh, fuck, I can't just take out the one before and replace it with the closer because then I'd be under time. So I decided to just like let go of my closer. I was like, I'm just not going to close on my best joke and like hope for the best. I had no time to really prepare. I was like, just told it's 4 minutes. All right, fine. There goes the closer. And then that brings me to a comedic point that a teacher of mine, Wally Collins, had said before, which is always be closing. Comedians are always like, oh, I have to do my closer. I have to do my closer. He's like, just get all your jokes good enough that if you have to close on one of them, you'll be fine. So I had gotten not my whole set for sure, but like for 5 minutes, if I had to end on any of the jokes I did in my tight 5, it would have been fine. So I was very lucky. I got myself to a point in my career where wherever I ended would have been like decent as a closer. So I knew I didn't have to do a closer. And it was the same thing for the 5-minute audition. So the pre-audition is 4 minutes for those who are interested in auditioning. The final audition for the booker is 5 minutes. So the 5 minutes, I was like, all right, I'm going to do my whole set. This is going to be great. But still, in the moment, I ran out of time. I got the light. I was like, oh, fuck. I only just started the joke before, which was a minute and a half. I was like, okay, well, there goes that closer again. I've never told my closer on stage at the Cellar yet.
Wow. That's so cool. Did you have to do a different 5 minutes for the second audition or just like
no,
they didn't care?
God. Yeah. I was like, because I actually had to ask, I was like, can I do the same 5? Because she saw your tape already. So I thought I'd do a whole new 5, which wouldn't be as hot, right? I just gave her my best 5. The next best 5 is not as me as good. Best first 5. They're like, no, she just wants to see how you feel in the room. And when I talked to her, she goes, you did exactly what I was expecting you to do. That's a good thing. I was like, great. So I think, yeah, wow. To everyone out there, just do the exact same set that she saw Jojo like. Because she was like, I only invite people after seeing their tapes if I think I'm going to pass them, right? I don't want to waste people's time. So as long as she likes her tape, that means she likes what she saw. So just do what fucking did on the tape.
Wow. That's so neat. So it sounds like, yes, she just said a few things to you and it probably just like all happened so fast, like you said. And then, you get the way to contact her and send avails, and then because I've heard from other comics that like that get past there, they and I don't know if this is
spoiled with a bunch of spots, and you'll be like, oh my god, they love me, and then like drop off after the first 2 months. So I'm like, okay, this is the honeymoon period. I get that. Enjoy it while it can, and not freak out when it tapers off. So at least I'm pre-warned. I don't think, oh, I did something wrong.
Yeah, that's really amazing, though. I mean, like you were funny, and it's just like you figured out, okay, like what's the missing piece? Is it networking? Like, because you had this goal. You had this goal of getting past the Cellar for so long, and you were like, it should. That's what so many comics think is like, well, these things should come to me if I'm funny, and then you just have to work so hard. Yeah. You just have to like
work so hard. I see really putting yourself out there, right? So I really think I do recognize that a lot of people's advice was just get good, right? Like, it was so easy, just get good. But then I noticed at a certain point, like, okay, no, wait, this person's really good. That person's really good. There was a comedian that I heard who was in some town, like, I don't know, I not New City or LA, right? Just another town in the States, and that he was so freaking good that comics thought he should be famous, but he wanted to stay in his little town, and so he never got known enough. Like, he is good enough, but he's not known because of his location. So I was like, you know what? There are other factors other than being good enough, like location. And then when I heard that this other comedian was because the person was so good at networking, I was like, all right. And I love that I found some part that I was missing and it fit the puzzle, because I think a lot of people will start blaming things like, oh, it's racism or sexism. And I never find it constructive, because what can you do about your race or your sex, right? So try and find a reason that you can actually tackle, like networking, move to a different city, or get good enough.
Do you think that like being an Asian woman helped you at all, or gave you a leg up, or you just feel like at the Cellar, like I've heard people say like, yeah, it's funny, which some comics hate to hear, because everybody wants to think that they are like good enough to make it. But do you feel like, because you will hear haters say like, oh, they just, not with the Cellar per se, but on some shows they'll be like, oh, well, they just booked you because you're a woman, or they just booked you. Like over the years, I've heard that so many times. So do you think that maybe helped you a little bit?
I have two answers to that. It is possible because Sharad, who recommended me to the Cellar, told the booker and the owner and a few other people, okay, if the only Asian comedians doing your club are famous, you're the problem. Meaning they're not developing non-famous comedians, right? So you can say there are no Asians at this club. The only Asians here are now famous, right? We need to get like more Asians. And like, we have none. Like, they're too famous. No, they still do the Cellar, of course. Everyone does a Cellar, but they're not like on a regular lineup, right? So I think he did play the race card with them, but at the end of the day, SD is, and I really admire this about her, because I'm like that. I prefer just looking at funny. And she's like that. She's like, I don't see race, I don't see gender, I don't see orientation. I just see who's funny. I'm not gonna book a woman just because she's a woman. I'll only book someone if they're great, right? And I love that about her, because like you said, people are like, oh, you're only on this because you're a woman. You won't say that at the Cellar, right? Like, if you're at the Cellar, everyone deserves to be there and it's actually really good. So I would prefer it if people, that was like the norm everywhere, that any place you go, you can rest assured that everyone was booked based on their merit. And that's why I actually did a controversial post. I don't know if you saw it. It was like a few years ago when I said, hey, I was very tired of female comics why is it all men on the lineup? Why is it mostly men? Where are the women? And it's usually like, one woman, 4 guys on these lineups, right? So they're complaining. And then one person, there was a show like Dudes Against Violence Against Women. It was in the title of the show, Dudes Against Violence Against Women. So it's all men on the lineup because it was dudes, right? This female comedian is like, why is all men on the lineup? I'm like, that's the purpose of the show. So I think women were taking it like so, they were being so sensitive about it. I finally posted this post. I was like, hey girls, it's statistics, not discrimination. Like we have about approximately 20% women to 80% men in comedy. So if a show wants to book the best comedians they can on a show of 5 comedians, 20%, one of them is going to be woman, and then 4 dudes. Like it's statistics, not discrimination. Like I never blame my sex for not getting spots. Like I thought, okay, I'm just not good enough. I'll go to the show I want to be at, watch the comics, saw where the bar was, and then work to get to that level, right? Like I never blame sex. And I did hear, I think in one of my first shows, someone was like, oh, you were the best woman. I was like, oh, no, you don't be like, oh, you're the best woman. I mean, there were like 2 women. So like, fuck shit, right? I want to be the best, period. So I never wanted to like be the best, vagina on stage. I always like, okay, make sure I was like as good enough as the guys. And that was, I guess maybe the benefit of being in a male-dominated industry. Even before comedy, I was in the lead industry. I was in, not that consulting is that heavily male-dominated, but the firm I was at had more males than women, where you never feel like, or at least I never felt like I could just be like, oh, I'm a minority, I should be given a break, affirmative action and all that. And also because I didn't grow up in America, I didn't grow up with affirmative action as a thing. I grew up in Singapore, where we were a meritocracy. It was like drilled into our heads that Singapore is a meritocracy. If you're good enough, you'll get ahead. So that's the mentality that I take to comedy. If I'm good enough, I'll get ahead. It's not discrimination. It's not sexism. It's not racism. No one's giving me a leg up for my race or my gender, but just get good enough and you get ahead. So that served me well, like being a Singaporean and just that meritocracy mindset has really helped.
Good for you, because I feel like there are. For my success. I feel like there are more comics out there who just think because of the number of years they've been doing it, or because they are women, things should just be coming to them. And like I'm similar to you. Like I get annoyed with hearing that as an excuse. It's like you should just always be doing the best you can do. And if you're not getting something, it's because you have to work harder. Like nobody is given anything. Nobody's owed anything. Like there's no roadmap for comedy. You have to get as funny as you can get. Find your niche, like find your thing, your angle. Like that's something I heard all the time, like starting. You're like, oh, you got to find your voice. And then for years as a new comic, you're like, what does that even mean? And then one day it's like, oh, I'm this. Yeah, and then one day you're like, okay.
Is your need? No, go on.
I just meant like, ultimately, I feel like, oh, like for me, I'm like an exaggerated version of myself on stage. It's like I'm still me, but it's just like it's a little bit of a caricature. I want to talk about your background as a lawyer. How did so you were fully like a career lawyer. You were like on a totally different path. What made you like turn to comedy, and how do you feel like your background as a lawyer like actually helps you in this industry?
So that's another interesting story. I blame John Lester, who okay, the bad is I was in New York City, I was a consultant at the time. After law, I switched to consulting, and I was in New York for my consulting project, and I went to a comedy club, Gotham Comedy Club, and John Lester was on stage, and I started crying in my comedy show. I was like, oh my God, this is what I really want to do. And for those who don't know, John Lester is a phenomenal comedian here in New York City, and
one of the nicest guys.
One of the nicest guys. Yeah. 3 years later, after I see him on stage, I invited him to be a headliner for a show that I was producing, and he came on, and I was hosting the show, and he never knew this story. He never knew that he was my inspiration. And I told the story on stage, like, I saw this person, I started crying. I was like, oh my God, this is what I really want to do. And I'm so honored to now bring him on the stage as the headline of the show. Everyone give it up for John Lester. Everyone's clapping, cheering. He comes on stage, he's like wiping his tears. He's like, oh, don't ever tell that story again. And then 4 years after that, he's the one hosting my comedy Cellar audition. That's why he gave me such a long hug on stage, because we have this whole backstory of he was my inspiration for doing comedy. And now he got to see me grow into being this comedian that just crushed the Cellar audition.
Wow, that's so
So that was
meaningful
part
and
one of the
so
story.
cool.
I got into comedy. Thank you. And then part two of your question was, how has being a lawyer helped? Has being a lawyer helped? I don't know. I mean, definitely some of the traits that makes a lawyer, being having facility with words and being very nitpicky with your words probably helps. Like I'm always like, all right, is this the perfect word? You know, like if it's not perfect enough, what else? I'm very concise with my words. I mean, lawyers are not known to be concise. They're very like they write a lot, but still, I know how to be concise, right? Because of that verbal facility. We probably can be more concise as lawyers, but we charge by the hour, so that's probably why we're more verbose.
Funny.
But as a comedian, as you know, brevity is the soul of wit. So I'm always very good at editing out to make it tighter and punchier. I guess in that sense, that helps. I think maybe the origin story gets me some fans. They feel it. They feel it's very inspiring. Like in my recent post for the Cellar passing, it broke 1,000 likes on Facebook, which none of my posts have ever done before. Almost 1,000 on Instagram, and a lot of the comments were like, wow, you're so inspiring. You know, you left the law to pursue your dreams and now you achieved your dreams. So I feel like in sense of like getting people on board supporting you, that story of like transitioning from something so rigid to something so artistic, probably gets more people following my journey. I've had law school friends like message me, oh my God, I thought like multiple times today how happy I am for you. So it's just like getting supporters, it helps help. But I wouldn't say being a lawyer has really helped like a tremendous amount. No, it doesn't make me
If anything,
funny.
it might be, yeah, like your work ethic and probably more so your background of like coming from Singapore, whereas like the best person gets the gig and just teaching you hard work over like, oh, I should just get things coming
so
to me.
did not teach me networking. It was America that taught me the importance of networking. It was like the combination of my two countries, hard work plus networking equals success.
And then you performed in Singapore. How did that come to be? Like after you left,
I mean,
obviously, and then.
After I left, I've been performing in Singapore over the years. So I perform in Asia once a year. I do a little Asia tour. I remember last time when I was back, I was on the headline in like Vietnam, and COVID was around, and my mom was like, if you go to Vietnam, when you come back, you have to quarantine your own room, and we're gonna separate your laundry from us. I'm not gonna talk to you for 2 weeks. I was like, oh, I'm going to Vietnam.
That's great. How do you feel like you have to alter your set or your comedy at all when you go abroad to Asian countries?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even when I started doing the road, I was doing New Jersey as my first road gig. I was like, wow, how come jokes that work in New York City don't work here? So that was my first inkling that your location is going to matter in where your jokes hit. So going to Asia was like a whole different ball game with like, oh my God, they're not getting this American reference. So I had to really edit my set to take out the American references, localize the humor more. And I nearly quit comedy because I was like, oh my God, I worked so hard for my jokes to work in one city in the entire world. But I stuck with it, and I've actually internationalized my set more. So some comedians in Asia have or in the UK as well, in Australia, they have an international set and a local set. I was like, that is a lot of fucking hard work. I was like, I'm not creating two sets, right? One was hard enough. So I just made my jokes more mass appeal, so I could do them anywhere: Asia, Europe, America. I do Europe as well once a year. So the benefit of touring internationally is that then my jokes become more appealing to a broader audience. I also sometimes I wonder if that's really a good thing, because then maybe it becomes too vanilla if like you're appealing to so many people. It helps you kill. That's probably why I could do so well at the Cellar audition, because I know these jokes work anywhere. So no matter if the tourist is from Norway or Denmark or Milwaukee, like they're probably gonna get it. So it helps in like getting a strong audience reaction. But I also wonder if it's making me too broad and not, like you say, find a niche, like kind of like the dark humor comics will have like their dark fans following them. There'll be Reddit fans. If I'm too broad, then maybe it's not unique enough. That's something that I have at the back of my mind.
Okay, that's cool. Have you like encountered any like salty comments or haters or like anything like that?
Oh,
Because it's like, as we know, comedians are very catty. It's like they won't say it, but it's very competitive. You're constantly comparing yourself to other people. So, I mean, I just noticed from doing this like 10, 11 years, like people get very jealous. So I'm just wondering if you've noticed like any, weird, salty stuff like that.
yeah. So one was just like funny comments from because I had passed at the comic strip live just last month, and then one of my friends was and it got like maybe 600 likes on my Facebook, and my other comic friend was saying, "Watch your Comedy Cellar pass get 12 likes because Jen comics don't want to like it."
Oh shit. That's great.
It's just one like funny thing. Another comedian did something very funny. Like yesterday was my first time out on the scene after my Cellar pass and my Cellar post. And one comment was like, "Jocelyn, congratulations on your pass at the comic strip."
That's great. All right, that's like more funny. Yeah, that's cute.
More funny, but I had one comic. He is a much more senior comic. He didn't know me, but I was doing my Cellar hang thing. He's a Cellar comic, and I was doing my Cellar hang thing. Do you know the guy who did Jeff Singer, Mehran?
Oh yeah, I know Mehran. Yeah, he did my Stonewall show all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he was he got kind of salty with me by saying like, "Oh, who is she? She's just a straight head. Why is she hanging out here?" And he was like, "Oh, you're such a nerd. I don't. And which grad school did you go to?" I was like,
"Georgetown." He's like,
"I knew it. I knew it." To my face. Yeah.
Wow. And also, don't feel bad about like being honest about what he said. He also called me like a conservative shill, so it's like we're not as good friends as we used to be. So yeah, this is what happens. Though. Yeah, we were like, I thought we were pretty tight. And he sent me flowers when my mom died. It was like, we had like some
so
like,
nice.
Yeah, it was so nice. And then like. Yeah, and then just I don't know if it was jealousy or what, but like on Twitter like called me like a conservative shill, and I was just like, oh wow, like that's pretty uncalled for. And then you hear about other people who've had like similar ish conflicts with him, and it's like everyone's going through their own journey. It's all good, but it's always funny.
I feel better when I found out. Yeah, because he was so verbally abusive that Sharad had to stand up for me. Like, why are you bullying her? And then they got an altercation. Mehran pushed Sharad. Sharad then saw red. Slam Mehran. That Mehran ended his ass on the Cellar floor.
Oh my god, that's so funny. There's always fights happening at the Cellar. I kind of love it.
Are there really? But actually, speaking of my Cellar story, this actually might have a part to play in it because like Mehran, shoved Sharad shoved Mehran, Mehran's on the Cellar floor. The manager was like, children. And that's how she got to know me. Because Sharad was like, oh, I think Mehran got jealous because some fans came by and were like asking Jocelyn for her Instagram, wanting to buy her drinks, la la la. And Mehran, that's when Mehran got kind of spicy. And so that put into the manager's mind that, oh, Jocelyn must be a good comedian to have like.
So it helped
I think that probably helped my audition because she was the one that passed me for my first audition. So maybe like all came together to be like meant to be, including getting verbally abused at the.
Yeah, people get jealous, and comedians are not generally known for being like the most well-adjusted, the most like sorted out, the most stable. So it's you hear about like every year, 6 months, there seems to be you hear about like some fight, at the Cellar. Like I've heard like like Kevin Brennan and Gary Goldman got into it once, and like you always once in a while you always hear about like a scuffle. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
So funny.
But
that's the clip we're working at.
and it's interesting. Like of course it's like it's comedy. It's you on stage. So if things aren't going your way, it's so easy to take it personally. But you have to try to not take it personally and go, okay, what can I adjust to get the goals that I want to get? I think a lot of comics like they are their own worst enemy. they self-sabotage and don't know it. It's like I see unhealthy, patterns with a lot of comics, and just from watching folks like over the years, you're like, oh, you can see like as we're kind of like our own worst enemy, or you just have to, like, I don't know, be able to not take your failures, I guess, personally in general, and be like, okay, what can I tweak? Like, if I'm going to stay in this industry, like, you got to change it up if you don't see things happening for you. What I love is that
I wanted to quit so many times.
You've what?
I think self-doubt was my biggest. I wanted to quit so many times. I think I actually quit like a few times too. I think self-doubt is just our biggest enemy because, like you said, there's no roadmap. Law was so linear, right? Like, do well your LSATs, apply to law school, get into a good law school, study hard, get good grades, get your law firm internship, do well your internship, you get the job offer, work as a lawyer, and then like work hard, and you rise to partner. It was so linear. Like, you knew the roadmap, you knew what to do. And as an Asian girl, like, I work well on that. I work well on like knowing the steps, having the structure, and like doing it. But comedy is like so fucked up, man. Like a comic 2 years in can start blowing up because of like some viral video that they did, and then comics 20 years in can still be struggling and trying to get. I was like, oh my god, what the hell have I gotten myself into? So it's so freaking easy to give up. I feel, and I started doing this thing called like, I started doing a renewable contract with myself. I was like, I'm going to renew my comedy contract for 1 year. This is what I'm going to do.
Oh wow, that's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah, don't look at it forever. Forever is intimidating. Just look at it as like a 1 year renewable contract. Like on really down days, I'm like, all right, 3 months. I'm giving this 3 more fucking months. And if I'm not at like a certain level of feeling good about my comedy, that's it. I have the right to quit. So giving myself permission to quit was actually more freeing. I think the most creative time was when I was like, that's it, I quit. I'm doing comedy fun. And while doing comedy just for fun, I was so much more creative. I was like, oh, it was the pressure that was getting me.
Wow. It's so interesting. Yeah. And it's good to remind yourself, like, yeah, like any other job, you can be fired, you can decide to quit. But with comedy, a lot of times, like, I think it's easy to get depressed because it feels like this life sentence. Like, oh, I can't have people on Facebook seeing that I've quit. Like, some people announce it just for attention. Some people just quietly sort of take a break, which is all good. I think a lot of people quietly quit during the pandemic because they had to a lot of people had to just move out of the city and figure something out. And I even Jocelyn, like, you're always somebody I've really liked and rooted for. I think like it was a couple years ago. Like, I remember like bonding with you over, because you said like you manifested this goal. This was on your vision board, and I remember like you were talking about going to this, like, it was like a masterclass for Regina Thomas Hauer, right?
Mama Gina.
Yes. Mama Gina, like Mama Gina, and she wrote this book called Pussy, which is all about like just embracing, like, and making time for your pleasure. It wasn't just like about masturbation. It just was about like female pleasure, like just sort of the philosophy of it, which I found fascinating. And I went to one of her talks, and like we kind of like bonded over this. Like, how did you come across her? What made you want to take that class, and what did you feel like you came away from after taking her class?
Yeah, so Mama Gina's School of the Womanly Arts. I found her actually because of my law work. I was in my law firm, back was hurting. I was talking to this partner. He's like, oh, I have a great osteopath for you. Went to this osteopath, and I kept seeing her regularly. And a few months later, for some strange reason, she was like, I have a book that I think you're going to really like. And it was Mama Gina's book, The School of Womanly Arts. I read that book, and I was like, oh my God, this book is life-changing because it's all about having fun, being in your pleasure, having fun no matter what. I was reading her book while I was on a plane to Washington, D.C. to recruit some students from my law school. There was this super cute guy sitting next to me, and we were like hovering up in the air for another 3 to 4 hours because I don't know what traffic thing was happening, weather. So we were like delayed by 3 to 4 hours. Everyone was bitching and moaning and complaining. I was reading the on the plane. So what I did was I turned to the guy and I start flirting with him, and we were chatting away. So much so that by the time we got into DC, he invited me out for a date that night. So we went on a date. Oh yeah, yes. And in fact, when I went to one of her intros. So the one that you went to was her intro, right? I met you there. So I did go for her intro before. And that day after the intro, I was so in my pleasure and so juiced up
Feeling
that, and
good.
it was just all about manifesting being pleasure, that when I went to the subway to go home, there was this guy walking down the platform with 2 bouquets of flowers. And I just thought, oh my God, I would love a bouquet of flowers. And then he just turns around, he goes, do you want one?
Oh my God. What an easy way. What an easy way for a guy to meet a girl. Like, just walk around with bouquets and hand them out. Like, you're going to get attention.
That's so true. That's so true. In fact, and he was like, I was working at a catering. They had extra flowers. I'll bring them home for my wife. But I feel like giving you one. I was like, what?
Wow.
So that's when I knew there was something in the energy of Mama Gina's work that can really help you manifest, right? And not the way that I was taught, hard work, sweat, blood, and tears, but from pleasure. And so the other secret trick is, before my audition, I reached out to all my Mama Gina girls, and we have a very strong community. And I asked them to like send me what we call juice, like good vibes, like good wishes. Before my first audition, they were like, yes, massive juice. Because they've been supporting my career too. It's a very supportive community. Aww. Second round, again, massive juice. And yeah, and they've been happy for me that I got in. So I would say the community has really helped. The idea of focusing on pleasure rather than just like work probably helps, at least to be a happier human being, but probably helps your comedy, because when you're up there, you don't want to be this like overworked, overstressed, worried person, right? You want to be in your joy and your pleasure. And then, because like they always say, if you're having fun, the audience is having fun. So if I'm feeling happy and pleasured in my life, then the audience is going to get some pleasure from me. And I didn't put this on my Facebook post because, like you said, comics can get salty, but I'll just tell you this. The manager told me at my audition, like, she said, I have never seen the audience react like that before. I was like, at the Cellar? I thought this was every day. So there was something about like a woman and her pleasure, her turn on, that like the audience was really responding to, that none of the comics was getting from them.
Wow, that's so amazing. Yeah, it's just all about your fucking, and the more I talk about this, the more woo-woo I sound, but I don't believe it any less. Like, your vibe is so important. The thoughts that you cultivate, like just like the choosing the foods that go in your body, choosing the thoughts that take up space in your head are so important. Oh. And who you're surrounding yourself with is so important, right? You keep in touch with that group on Facebook. It's like, if you, and I notice a lot of comics that are just like dragging ass for a decade. It's like, yeah, your tribe is negative. You're having negative thoughts. You're coming from this, why me? Instead of being like, oh, hey, like, what do I love about comedy? And just like you said, it's like a show. I have to remind myself too, before I get up, it's like, you have to think like, yeah, this crowd wants to love you, and like, you love comedy. So all you have to do is like help them have a good time. Like, just draw your best out. And we see a lot of comics, like, you know, their styles may be dry or like sarcastic or like low energy, or like, you know, like Gary Veter's a good example of, like, he's just low energy and he's funny, and like he kind of makes the audience like come to him. But if you are like an upbeat, if you're an upbeat person, and it's almost like the best version of you that's with friends that people love, and like that makes your friends laugh, like you have to bottle that and just bring it to an audience in a sense, you know. That's like, it's like what you said, putting it,
best version of you that your friends love is what you should bring to the audience. Yeah, I love that way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's just like, it's funny. Like, I always think of it too, like in terms of like, it's like a seduction. It's like, you have to seduce this audience. And that is something it's a very like female point of view. And like, I haven't talked to that many other people who like, you get it, you know. It's just like, there's something different about like a woman's joy and sense of humor that like a man just isn't going to bring to the table.
That's right. Yeah. And so we have to work that to our advantage.
Yeah.
I love that you see it from the point of view too.
Totally. And I just like, as soon as I saw that you passed, I was like, it reminded me of like, oh, like the Mama Gina teachings. And I was like, you know, with any like kind of spiritual practice, there are points in your life when you kind of like get away from it. You feel distant from it. Totally. You feel like detached from yourself and your joy. You're like, oh yeah, it's just a good reminder. Like, yeah, you got to reconnect. You got to check check in with yourself, just like any other like doctor's appointment. You have to be like, oh, am I feeling like a little spiritually detached? Like consciously kind of reconnecting to that. And that was good. You were like, oh, what do I love about comedy? What do I really want? Instead of a lot of comics just like meander and drag their feet for years. And like, you'll see some on stage and it's like, do you even like doing this? Like, do you even enjoy?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And by speaking of the femininity, you really bring that to stage. I see you, you're like so beautifully dressed, and your hair, like you always look so beautiful in your feminine stage. Yeah, you do that. I do, but
oh, do we lose her? Oh no, Jocelyn. She was just about to give me a huge compliment and she's gone. Jocelyn, come back. Oh boy. All right. Well, while she comes back, maybe she'll re-log in.
Oh, here.
Okay, okay, good. You're still here. It was so funny. Like while you were like Zoom lagging, I was like, oh, she's about to give me a compliment.
There was too much feminine power for the internet.
I know. It had to shut down, right?
Yeah, it had to shut down. But yeah, I do. So go ahead.
I love Zoom. I love the Zoom lag so much. I've known that I don't know. I've always felt like I've loved watching you, and I love that we like connected over that. And it's like you're tapping into like this other power that I think like people forget about or dismiss, is like the manifestation. It's like finding your joy. And because I remember a few years ago, I heard, I don't even remember who, but I heard a couple comics say like, oh, like Jocelyn doesn't write her own material. Like people always talk shit. And I just was like, and it's weird. It's like, you kind of like, anytime I hear someone like kind of talk shit about somebody I like sort of quietly log in. And I'm like, like, where is this coming from? Like, it's probably jealousy, but how do you deal with like, haters and rumors and shit like that?
I remember this stage very clearly because my friend was the founder of this comedy writing service called Comedy Wire. And he's like, Jocelyn, can you please try this service for us? Give me your feedback and be my guinea pig. So it's not like I paid or anything. I was just like his guinea pig to test out his product because he was the founder. And it's a service where writers in the service will punch up whatever material you need, whether it's the script or a stand-up set, a commercial that you have. So I'm pretty sure that's where the rumor came from. They were supposed to sign an NDA, but haters be haters, right? So I did hear that. I was like, what the fuck, man? Like trying out your service has like gotten like word out that I don't write my own material. I mean, first of all, I only got one angle from the service. It's not like I took their joke and like said it on stage and it worked, right? I said to freaking tweak it and add sauce and flavor, add more punchlines, like turn into a whole fucking like 2-minute chunk. So it was very insulting, and I was complaining about it to my comedian friend. And I was very upset. I mean, like having worked so hard, the last thing you want is people like doubting your credibility, right? And he's like, look, Jocelyn, this is a compliment, okay? If you were not funny and not, rising up in the scene, no one would care that you hired some writing service or whatever it was. Like no one would care that you have writers, right? If you were like a bad comic, like this, take this as a compliment that you are good. That's why people are bitching about it. It's like, all right, fine. I will try and see it that way. But I was very upset at the time. I was like,
when you say like, oh, you like you buy an angle, is an angle just like a premise or like what is that?
So I mean, so it was a joke I wanted to do about how being on a date and a guy saying he's not looking for a relationship is like what, right? Like I went in an analogy and someone's like, oh, it's like, hey, how about I come by your office and pick up a paycheck even though I don't work here? So that's like the angle. I mean, he said it as like, this should be a joke.
Okay.
Like that's like saying, hey, I don't work here, but I'm going to come by your office, pick up a paycheck. Like, so that he gave me like a one-liner. It was like a B joke when I just said it that way. So then I had to like modify it. But so he gave me the right angle. I was like, oh yeah, this is a great angle. Not wanting a relationship on a date is like not wanting to work but getting a paycheck, right? So that's a great angle. Let me just yeah. So I'm very grateful for the comedian for giving me the angle.
Yeah, and that happens all the time. Like after shows, it happens frequently. Like another comic will be listening to your set and be like, "Hey, do you mind? Like I have a tag for you." And I've listened to comic sets where I've come up to them and be like, "This is such a funny idea. Like, have you ever tried this?" And it really depends on who it is, because some people are very open to that. I'm super open to that because it's like I take it as a compliment. It's like, oh, somebody's listening and cares. And I don't always, like this, I have one brain. So it's like, if you see it a different way, that's cool. But some people are very close to like, oh, like I would never take a tag from someone else. It's like, can't be. There's a lot of different ways.
I mean, I'm a big believer in it because I was hanging out with like some really great comics. I mean, Derek Gaines and Monroe Martin, like is the next level up. That is like Dave Pelt, right? So they're like really, really solid at the top of their game. And they're like, oh yeah, we give each other angles and punchlines and tags all the time. And I had a comedy class with Corey Kahaney, and she's like, no comedian writes alone. Like even she has her writing group, So I learned from a very early stage that feedback from other people is so helpful. Even non-comedians. I mean, if a joke doesn't work, if I'm talking to an audience member afterwards, I'll be like, so why? What was wrong with this? Like, what did you not get? So I'm always like constantly getting feedback. And I think that's one of the reasons why I managed to like get stuff that works, because I'm so open to criticism on my material. Like, yes, tell me how it could be better.
Yeah, I think that's what
I had a new joke that I swore was so funny. It was a joke about I was hooking up with a guy for the first time. He's like, you know what? It really turned me on if you call me daddy. And I was like, you know what? It really turned me on if you call me tomorrow. And I thought that was so funny, right? Because like guys will pump and dump and not call the girl the next day, but it was getting like a very B laugh. And so afterwards, the audience was like, oh, you were so funny. That I was like, okay, but why did this joke not work? And they're like, oh, I thought maybe you meant like you were done with him. Like, oh, call me tomorrow. I'm done with you. They didn't get that I had meant, oh, I don't pump and dump me. Still call me, right? So they didn't get it. So because of that feedback, now
okay. That makes sense.
So definitely, like, all right, you know what? Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? If that is what I mean by I get people to write for me when I get feedback, like, yeah, so be it. Whatever. I'm the Cellar, you're not. So shut the fuck up.
I love you, Jocelyn. That's ultimately, it comes down to that. Right? It's like,
and you know what? When you're at the highest level, like Chris Rock level, they're getting writers. So right, I my goal is to finally be able to get writers to write for me. Like that would be great when I can finally be like, yeah, I hire writers. That means I've made it.
And you've also been like actually a comedian for many years. I think it's only something worth talking shit about if like I was opening for a comic in Naples, Florida, and he was like, for a fact, I know a guy who has written most of Jeremy Piven's set. And I'm like, that makes sense. It's like he just kind of got into this industry, and then he was headlining like within a couple months. Obviously he's a big name, he can fill a room, but I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because he hasn't been in comedy for years and years, and he can do that. He's got like the money to do that. Getting tweaks.
I mean, I do.
Yeah.
I do wish I had the money to hire writers. I think it would make our money so much easier.
Oh God, it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, but this one comedian friend, he already made his millions. Now he wants to try comedy, and he's like, yeah, I can just buy the best comedian to write for me. So I was like, oh man, it is so unfair.
That does feel so unfair, because it's like, I just feel like it's you're up there like kind of pouring out your soul. It's one thing to get like tweaks and help with like a few things here and there, but to like buy whole like swaths of material off, that just seems like so disingenuous. But everyone is in this for different reasons.
Satisfaction, right? Yeah, I guess so. But so don't you get so much satisfaction from like your jokes working?
Yes, it's like
So
it's a
I
little
be very
burst.
dissatisfied if like it's a little birth, yeah. It'd be so dissatisfying and for people to just like write for me and I just like and then you're just an actor.
Yeah, exactly. Which like makes sense because
Yeah.
if he came from the acting world, he's used to regurgitating
Ah,
lines. And I can
that
talk
makes
shit about
sense,
Jeremy Piven
yeah.
because he was rude to me, so I get a pass.
And we hate him too.
It's like I love everybody until you're like mean to me for no reason. I don't know. People, yeah, it was. People get weird. I feel like every industry has its own like drama and gossip, whatever. But it's just so competitive, and like we're all linked, kind of, with social media. So it's like you just never know who's keeping tabs on you, who's feeling a way about your success, and it's like I just admire you, Jocelyn. Like you're doing you. It's like it's so important to have goals because it's like why else are you slogging away, going into the city, doing sets, like staying up late at night? It's like not an ideal lifestyle. So it's like you have to remember why you love it to keep you, to keep you fresh and energetic about it.
Yeah, totally.
Jocelyn, where can people find you, follow you? They can see you tonight at the Cellar. And I'm sure you're
Yes.
posting
My
your
birthday
other
slot.
Cellar dates.
I'm I'm doing it drunk because I'm coming for my birthday party. I told the person whose show it is, it's Sharrat's show tonight. I was like, it's my birthday party. I can't do this show. He goes, just come by after your party. I was like, I'm gonna be drunk. So are all of us. So
Yeah,
I'm doing my first
you'll
Cellar
fit
spot
in.
as a Cellar comic drunk.
That's good.
So my
That's
Instagram is
good.
Jocelyn Comedy, Jocelyn Comedy,
Awesome. Awesome.
and I
Jocelyn, thank
post
you
every
so much.
Saturday on.
Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah. And follow her on Instagram. Check her out at the Cellar and at the comic strip and everywhere else she'll be getting up. Jocelyn, congrats. Really proud of you. You're kicking ass.
Thank
And I hope to see
you.
you soon.
See you soon.
Bye, Jocelyn. Bye.
Bye.